It's been 30 years, and we are still plagued by what happened to these children. These children witnessed something that would forever change the course of their lives. Some are still haunted by the sight of what they saw, and no amount of therapy can make it all go away. On 16 September 1994, just outside of the small town of Ruwa, Zimbabwe, 62 children at a once prestigious school named Ariel said that they saw one or more silver aircraft descend from the sky and land on a field near their school. Despite the critics, the children still stand by what they said and saw. Ruwa itself is a small farming town 22 kilometers southeast of Harare, which is the main city. At the time of the event, it wasn't even a town. It was just a name for a place in the area, a junction in an agricultural area. Nothing remotely special about this location. The school itself where the sightings occurred was a private aerial school that was known to the elites. Most of the students came from Harare's rich white families, which gives more substance to this story. The sightings occurred at exactly 10 a.m. on September 16th, 1994. The children were outside for a mid-morning break. At that time, all the adult faculty were having a meeting inside. The meeting took about 15 minutes, which corresponded with the end of the kids' break. When the children returned to class, they told the teachers that they had seen aliens landing in a field near the school, describing the aliens and sharing their experiences to the teachers. The teachers thought nothing of it, thinking maybe it was just their imagination or a game the kids were playing. So they did nothing and sent them home as normal. When the kids got home, they told their parents what they saw, and the next day, a lot of parents came to the school to talk to the teachers about what was going on. They didn't send their kids to a very expensive school to learn about aliens. The teachers were confused and interrogated the kids, but the children still stood by their confession that they saw aliens. In a matter of minutes, the news went viral, and everyone was talking about the children. It was reported on ZBC radio, and it gained even more attention, so much that it got the attention of the BBC's correspondent in Zimbabwe school on 19 September to film interviews with pupils and staff. After investigating this incident, Leach stated, "I could handle war zones, but I could not handle this." This was coming from someone who had covered war-torn parts of Africa like Nigeria, Angola, and Rwanda for the BBC. He was familiar with gunfire, intense situations, and he even witnessed the deaths of several colleagues. Despite his veteran experience, Tim was unsure about how to proceed with this news. The next person that investigated the children's claims was Cynthia Hind. She visited the school on 20th September 1994. Cynthia Hind is an author and a field researcher who specializes in UFOs. Now, unlike some who might do it for fame, Cynthia was genuinely interested in learning more about our extraterrestrial neighbors. So, her investigation was out of curiosity and for science, even if she didn't know at the time. She interviewed some of the children and asked them to draw pictures of what they had seen, which, frankly speaking, looked like something out of a horror movie scene. She also reported that all the children told her the same story, but she or Tim couldn't make sense of it. That's when a third party was invited to help. In November, Harvard University professor of psychiatry and Pulitzer Prize-winning author John Mack visited the Ariel school to interview.
What staring at you is it?
Mack was a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. His work and study on Lawrence of Arabia and A Prince of Our Disorder, The Life of T.E. Lawrence, won him the Pulitzer Prize, which is the highest award you can get in the writing world. But in the early 1990s, Mack became interested in alien abductions and wrote his best-selling book, Abduction: Human Encounters with Aliens, in 1994. He believed that these stories about alien abduction or sightings told by hundreds of people should at least be investigated, instead of laughed at, or worse, tagged as a sort of mental illness. Despite his newfound success, he was having trouble with Harvard because his focus was now more on aliens, most especially the stories told by people, which is something that a lot of universities frown on. So, When he got the call about the situation in Ruwa, he ran to the location to interview the children. While speaking to the psychiatrist, the children opened up even more about what they'd experienced during their alleged alien encounter. Hind, Leach, and Mack interviewed 60 kids between the ages of 6 and 12, and they all said they had seen at least one UFO. One little girl who Mack interviewed, named Haley, said that what caught her attention was a strange sound. According to the girl, the spacecraft sounded like someone blowing a flute. Some kids said they heard a buzzing sound, like bees or electricity. Several said they saw a shiny object fly through the sky and land near some trees. That was when the kids rushed over to find out what it was. It was at this point the kids said they saw two small figures dressed in skin-tight black bodysuits come out of the ship. The figures were maybe 4 feet tall. Their faces were thin, pale, and almost plasticky, and they had 2 huge black eyes. The first figure stayed with the ship, and the second one ran through the grass. In one of John Mack's interviews, a student described the figure running as bouncy, as if a human would run on the moon. Several other children said it looked like he was running in slow motion. Finally, the figure stopped in front of them. Many of the kids ran at this point, but some, mostly older kids, stayed and watched as the aliens came closer. Maybe they were paralyzed with fear or were just curious, but for some reason, they just stood and watched the aliens. A girl called Lucille, who was 12 years old at the time, felt like she was stuck. She couldn't move. She felt time and space around her warp, and her ears were ringing louder and louder. Suddenly, she saw visions of some sort of apocalyptic event on Earth. She saw people screaming as their cities were on fire. Millions of trees burned down to ashes, oceans boiling hot, and destruction all over. Imagine seeing a vision of the end of the world with so much suffering, destruction, and death as a kid. Another child was standing next to Lucille. She was watching in silence. She tried to move, but couldn't. She knew she wasn't stuck, but at the same time, she couldn't move. I know how that feels, and sometimes it can be a scary feeling. You know how you are awake, but can't move yet. No matter how hard you try to get up, your body won't. Some may even feel like they are choking. That is known as sleep paralysis, and it's a feeling of being conscious but unable to move. Only that for this girl, she wasn't sleeping. It looked like everyone who saw the creature's big black eyes were all trapped in a trance. To the kids in the trance, it seemed only like a minute or two, but in reality, 15 minutes had passed. Suddenly, the school bell rang, indicating break was over. In their interviews with Mack, the children, over and over again, talked about the creature's big black eyes that they just couldn't look away from. The creature, or creatures, communicated to the kids telepathically about our environment, which is the horrifying vision some kids saw. They then went back to the craft and disappeared. In Mack's interviews, one 5th grader tells how he was warned about something that's going to happen, and that pollution mustn't be. An 11-year-old girl told Mack, "I think they want people to know that we're actually making harm on this world, and we mustn't get too technologed." One child said that he was told that the world would end because they are not taking care of the planet. Now, why this is important to me is because most people who claim to be abducted share similar stories of how they are told to warn people or our leaders to take care of Earth, and how our actions, if not checked, could lead to the destruction of our planet. After World War II, there was a surge in UFO reports, especially after the nuclear bomb on Hiroshima. Many military personnel serving at the time talked about seeing UFOs almost every week, basically everywhere, even from the ocean. There were numerous unexplained sabotages done at several nuclear power plants all over the world. It was as if, as mankind was busy trying to destroy itself by showing who had more power, another faction was working round the clock and risking detection to make sure we were all alive. Now, if this was an adult sharing their experience, I might have objections here and there, like with this video we covered where a man talked about how he spent a week with aliens. But these are kids. They don't have time to be intrigued by conspiracy theories. I remember being a kid, and most of the time, if I was not watching cartoons, it was practicing WWE moves or running around. I don't think anyone that age would sit down and say, let's come up with a lie so good it shocked the whole world. The adults questioned the kids, asking if what they saw wasn't just a weird plane, but the kids were sure what they saw wasn't a plane. For starters, these were rich kids, so I am pretty sure they know exactly what a conventional plane looks like from all their frequent travel. But one thing stood out. Hind said that the kids' different ethnic backgrounds made it possible for them to have different ideas about what they had seen, and not all of them thought they had seen aliens. Some of the kids thought the short, fuzzy things were something known as tikaloshas, which are monsters from Shona and Ndebele mythology. In a way, I see the resemblance. So I understand how one section of the kids said they saw aliens, and another said they saw a demon. This is what most critics hinge on, by saying the stories don't corroborate, but what they fail to notice is that whether it is an alien or a demon, all 61 kids say, without a doubt in their minds, that they saw something that changed their lives forever.
This time, can you describe what he looked like, the shape of his head?
Well, I couldn't see his nose, but his nose was quite small, and his mouth was quite small, and his eyes were shaped like an thing.
It's swimming around down there, so I went down to see what was happening, and I actually saw this out in the trees, and it was like in a Milky Way pattern on it, like silver and green and that sort of colors. And then there was this little boy crying, so I went up to him to see what was wrong with him, and he said he was quite afraid of it. And then that actually made me quite afraid of it, because when somebody's afraid, I get afraid. And then I saw this person, and his eyes were like in a slant, like so, and his mouth was just like a line, like this. And then at the time, the teachers were in a staff meeting, so nobody actually went up to go and call the teachers, because I think they were too afraid and everything. So when the bell rang, because somebody eventually went up, one of the prefects went and said to one of our teachers, Mr. Vernon, please can you ring the bell, because there's quite a bit of a performance down there with all the kids running around. And then somebody from BBC came to us, and he went for a walk down there with us with a Geiger count. And actually on that piece of metal over there, we could stand up on it, and you could actually see a few burn marks. So he asked us, when we were walking down there with him, he said, please could you come down with us to go and have a look at the things. So when we walked about, if there's about 6 poles, and if you have a look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there were burn marks actually on the ground. And then the heels there on the rock, the day that it happened, there was something glittering, like quite strongly. And then when we came back to school the next day, it was just gone. And also, when we went down with them, the burn marks were just gone, that's like a few minutes later.
How long did you observe this whole happening?
I think it was about 5.5 minutes when we went down there, because it was actually quite scary.
Well, I was at the tech shop over there, and then I saw people crowding up at near the site. So I went there, and I looked, and I saw this ship, and it had this light like a pattern, yellow, purple, and green. To keep on going around, and then there was something running across, and something of the ship that moved. Then when I looked more down, when I looked like straight vision with the glass, to some like alien thing. He had big eyes, like what Guy was saying here.
Do you agree with the other two that the eyes were slanting, the mouth was rather thin, the nose small, and it was about how tall would you assume?
Maybe about 3.5 feet. testimony.
But you agree with the other descriptions?
Yeah.
There have been other well-known reports of large groups of school children seeing strange UFOs. The Ariel school story just happens to be one of them. In 1966, around 200 students and workers at a school in Melbourne, Australia, said they saw a cigar-shaped UFO land near the school. In 1967, the same kind of witness report came from a school in Miami, Florida. Also, in Britain, children said they saw a UFO land near their school in 1977, and some of them said they saw aliens outside the craft. So, what happened in Ariel's school turned out not to be an isolated event, but a regular occurrence. In such, just 25 miles away, at Pier House School, about 100 students said they saw a flying object that looked like it was going to land, but never did. The school and bus radio systems also stopped working on the same day. This happened 2 days before the sightings happened at Ariel School, and in the next 2 days, the famous event happened. To skeptics, the Ariel phenomenon can be easily explained. For starters, Hind recorded a number of UFO sightings in the form of multiple weird light shows in the days before the incident at the school. But the light show that hundreds or thousands of people noticed was actually the re-entry of the Zenit 2 rocket from the Cosmos 2290 satellite launch. All right, fair enough. This analysis makes sense. However, it wasn't enough to convince Hind, and it looks like she was right. Another skeptic was that what happened at Ariel School could be a case of mass hysteria. There was a lot of chaos. An unknown object was seen. Kids were yelling and pointing. Then they started crying. Amidst all this potential chaos, memories could get confused as more grander than they were, which could lead to false memories. Bear with me, because we are entering into the realm of psychology. False memories may arise off of continually building upon some flawed recollection. There was a case in Sweden where one kid claimed to be molested, and then a bunch of others started claiming the same, all of which proved to be false. False memory differs from simple memory errors. We all have trouble remembering things sometimes, but a false memory is more than just a mistake. It means being sure that the memory is true, like it happened. It is not about forgetting or mixing up details of things that we experienced. It is about remembering things that we never experienced in the first place. And the scary thing about false memory is that almost every one of you watching this video has experienced it. I have a niece whose birthday was changed to another day because we all thought that was the day she was born, and it wasn't. It wasn't until a decade later that we finally corrected ourselves. We all experience false memories. It could be as simple as being sure you locked the door when in fact you didn't. Remembering a childhood memory when in reality, it never happened. It can be quite scary and makes you feel like you are in a matrix of some sort. So, skeptics believe the kids could have experienced mass hysteria, which leads to false memory, and then to the Mandela effect. While false memory tends to be personal, the Mandela effect can involve multiple people. The Mandela effect is a phenomenon where a large group of people remembers an event or detail one way, but it actually occurred differently. It's named after the instance where many people falsely remembered that Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, while he actually passed away in 2013. And these people were so certain they were right. Could that have been what happened to the children? But here's the thing. If this was an isolated event, we could say it's mass hysteria. But Ariel School wasn't the only school that had gone through that experience. And like I said earlier, their testimonies of what the aliens said to them with telepathy align with what most abductees say. It's been 30 years, and believe it or not, those kids still stand by what they said when they were little. After interviewing all the children and several of their teachers, Mack gave a talk to the parents and he told them he believed them. The children we talked with clearly were talking about a phenomenon that occurred in physical reality. The stories were consistent, and the way they talked about it left virtually no question in our minds that what happened was just about what they said happened. For a while, the story was global news, and then it mostly faded away, at least until Randall Nickerson picked up the story in 2007. He ended up interviewing 43 of the students who witnessed the event that day. Some people were eager to talk, but others would only do it if they weren't being filmed. After gathering enough information, he made a documentary about the event titled Ariel Phenomenon, having a score of 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. So, I guess the documentary is good. But the story of the Ariel School UFO incident isn't perfect. Many students agreed on some details, but there were a lot of differences and inconsistencies in the stories. Some students saw the beings, but not the craft, while others went into great detail about the object, but don't remember any beings or entities of any kind. Some kids who were playing in the yard at the same time didn't see anything. The kids who saw it couldn't say whether it was one or more UFOs. Remember how I said the ship was silver? Some kids were certain the ship was black with green stripes, and one said it was red. A lot of inconsistencies in the story. Dr. Mack's participation in the case was also problematic. He didn't get to the school until months after the event. In that time, the students had talked to many people, been interviewed by the media, and drawn many pictures of what they saw, which, frankly speaking, is a lot of time for the story to change. When Dr. Mack finally got there, he interviewed the kids in small and large groups, and they would just agree with each other's stories. Heck, even kids who never saw anything could lie they did just to feel among. Plus, Dr. Mack was known for asking very leading questions. Before Dr. Mack brought up the idea that aliens were communicating telepathically, the kids never brought it up in previous interviews. The same went for the telepathic message the kids said they got about how the Earth was in danger because of pollution. The kids never brought that up until Dr. Mack joined the investigation. All these and more add more credibility to the skeptics. There is even one former student named Dylan who came forward in a Netflix documentary called Encounters to say it was all a prank, that he perpetrated a hoax to get out of a language class. But his one testimony doesn't make much sense. 60 testimonies versus just one? And despite this happening in a school, there were also reports from other parts of Zimbabwe and South Africa of UFO activity and lights in the sky on the same day, same area. And this kid claims to have made it all up, so he didn't have to learn a language. In such, Cynthia Hind had been paying close attention to numerous reports of UFO sightings in southern Africa. An increasing number of people in September 1994 said they had seen lights racing across the sky, and some said they had even met aliens. And when Hind heard about the incident at the school, she knew something big had happened. It seems much more likely that this kid saw something in 1994 and was so traumatized by it that he made up the story that he pulled off a hoax, and everyone else just happens to be lying. There are 60 students who say they saw something, but none of the other students, not even the 2 he said were helping him, have come forward to back his claim that he faked it. This makes me believe the 60 students who said they saw something. These kids, when interviewed, didn't know who Cynthia was or who Tim was. So being pro-UFO to win an autograph from Cynthia sounds unlikely. Some of them even have rocky relationships with their families who see them as outcasts for spewing nonsense about aliens. Remember, they are from wealthy families, and that has their own sets of rules on how to act, eat, talk, and all that. And I am certain that talking about aliens is not acceptable. I believe they saw something that day.
There was no reason for any of us to make that up.
I've not spoken to anybody about it. Not because I'm not proud of it, but because I don't want the stigma.
So it's something that I've had to deal with
for 19 and a half years.
I don't want to say I felt like I knew it, but I knew that I didn't have to be afraid.
I wanted to apologize. I should have taken more notice. But I didn't. I was more concerned about me and not them. And what was going on in my own sort of experience. And that's what, yeah.
And if you could summarize in just one sentence what took place September 1994 here at Ariel School, Ruwa, Zimbabwe, what would you say?
Aliens visited us. And that's about it, yeah. And that's where if you believe it, you believe it. If you don't, well...